Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Empire Network, Sports Corner with the Con Man. I am your host, the Con Man, with my very special co-host, Mike Semio. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, as well. We have a very special guest. He's having a little difficulty logging in, but I just want to let you know that we had a very tough 2 weeks doing the basketball camp and refereeing at night. It's been a hell of a grind, but it's been fun. And I know you can imagine how it was. But as I texted you before, I was telling you about Coach Steve Cavallo.
Yes.
Great guy. And he spoke very highly of you almost every day at camp. He spoke, I guess you were a year ahead of him or a year or two ahead of him.
I was 2 years ahead of him, yes. He
said you guys were like a guard, you and Kenny Kudo. So yeah. that was kind of interesting, but he spoke very highly of you, and we had a great time. I lost my voice, but by some miracle, I gained it back. We have a very special guest, y'all, and I'm very honored to have him, Coach Brian Baptiste. I don't want to go into detail until he gets on, but what are your recollections of Coach Baptiste before he gets on?
Well, this goes back to, our time, Michael, when we were kids, and he and Eddie Rodrigues and those guys were ahead of us a little bit. And I kind of looked at them as sort of what you wanted to be, right? You wanted to be that respected guy on the court, who, when those guys showed up to play, you wanted to get on their teams, you wanted to play against them. So that was my first recollection of both Brian and Eddie, because it seemed like they were inseparable at times. Because they were always, it seemed like when one was around, the other one was around. And so I had great opportunity at times to play with them. I played against them a couple of times in open division games when I got a little bit more seasoned. Actually, right before I went to Bryant, I played in a couple of tournaments against them. But Brian was always welcoming. Brian was always supportive, and so was Eddie. They were always supportive of me through some difficult times I had with some injuries one summer, but they were always very encouraging. And anytime I saw them, wherever it was, if it was at a fundraiser for someone, if it was just kind of walking through a restaurant and seeing them and spending some time with them, I'll save these stories a little bit for when Brian comes on. But those are my recollections of him, and then just really following him in his success.
Well, I think we got him on the air right now. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing rather well. For those folks who do not know, this is Coach Brian Baptiste, one of my favorite people in the world. I'm going to give you a little, because, Brian knows I do my homework. So we're going to do a little something here real quick. We're going to University of Massachusetts Dartmouth men's basketball head coach Brian Baptiste reached his 700th career win at the time today with a 68-57 road victory over Castleton University. In his 40th season as coach of the Corsairs, Baptiste's win is the most, check this out, y'all, the most among all active Division III coaches and 13th most across all divisions. Coach Baptiste achieved his first win for UMass Dartmouth, then known as Southeastern Mass University, against Anna Maria College on November 1983. Wow. Over his career, Baptiste has won 12 Little East Conference championships and made 14 Division III national tournament appearances. Baptiste occurred 17 tournament wins and reached 5 Sweet 16s and 1 Final Four. And this is the one that's true to my heart. But prior to that, Baptiste led the 21-22 UMass squad to the Sweet 16 for the first time since the 1992-93 tournament run. He coached the team to a win over Emerson in the first round and Nazareth College in the second, before to number 1 seed Randolph-Macon, who was dominant en route to winning the national championship. His most successful season, 1992-93, saw the Corsairs win the Little East Conference tournament, and that's the year that I happened to be color commentator. The Corsairs with my man Alex Styles. But anyway, he's had a tremendous career, and Coach Baptiste, I want to know, first of all, before we go into your coaching career, what was it like during your high school playing days? I know I'm going way back, Coach.
Brian, you have to dust off some memories there real quick.
Oh, my
I
God.
gotta do this.
High school was great. I mean, we had a really good basketball team. My junior year, my senior year, we made it to the Tech tournament. My senior year, it was Eddie Rodrigues and myself in the backcourt. Larry Livamento was one of the forwards. Keithy Francis, who was an outstanding track runner,
Yes.
was one of the forwards. And the other guard forward was Nunu Gonzalez. We had a 6'6", 6'7" kid named Phil Mello coming off the bench. My junior year, we had a guy named Greg Sanders, who was only about 6'2", but he was a center. He was a jumping jack.
Yes.
Just great memories. My senior year, Stevie Ramus was only a sophomore, and he played in the game at the Tech tournament that we played in. He went on to have a good career at Northeastern. We had a lot of good athletes, a lot of good players, a lot of good people.
Now, after you graduated from high school, where did you attend college?
Well, after high school, I went as a PG year to Worcester Academy. And from Worcester Academy, I got a scholarship to go to AIC, American International College.
And how was it? How was your career there?
I had a solid career there. At that time, when you were a freshman, you played JV basketball. There was a lot of differences back there. You had to play JV as a freshman. I believe there was no dunking back in that day or that time. I couldn't dunk. I'm just saying the rules that were in effect during that day. Obviously, no 3-point line or anything like that. But yeah, it was a good decision on my part, and very happy I went there. Met a lot of great people. A lot of them are still my friend to this day.
Now, of course, I got to let my co-host, Mr. Mike Singer, chime in. Go on, Mike.
Brian, it's good to see you. I don't think you recall the last time we actually spoke, which was probably a year and a half ago, where we spoke. I spoke to you about the book that I was writing, and I am still writing. So it's good to see you. We could get stuck on the old school stuff forever, because I love hearing that stuff. And I think, in our conversation that we had, we sort of covered a lot of what you just mentioned just now. But I'm just curious as to, as you have moved on with coaching, and you mentioned the certain situations that didn't exist when you were as a player. But right now, as you're recruiting, what's that like now compared to, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago? What's that like for you?
Well, recruiting has been pretty similar and consistent throughout the years. The big change was COVID-19. And once that hit, that changed recruiting for me for good. I mean, during those years, we weren't allowed in gyms. So we had to do everything online. So my last year's team, I actually had 3 online recruits, and that's hard to do. I mean, guys are sending you highlight tapes. I sent back an email saying, I don't want to see a highlight tape. I want to see a game tape.
Right.
So I get to see, their mistakes as well as their highlights. And I just think recruiting that way is very difficult. I much rather be in a gym. So, now we're back in the gym again, but because of the way mass media is and social media, I get bombarded with YouTube clips and a lot of different videos on a daily basis. And I never want to leave anything unturned. So I try with my assistant coaches to watch all those videos to make sure that we're not missing on anybody.
Coach Baptiste, again, I want to, this is my tribute to you, so I'm going to go back a little bit. After you graduated college, what made you decide to go into coaching?
You know what? I majored in sociology, and I minored in education. I wanted to be a probation officer when I came home. I did a little bit of an internship out in Springfield, where AIC is, and there was one job available. I didn't get it, so I had a minor in education, so I was able to get a teaching job. So while I was teaching, Eddie Rodriguez was the freshman high school coach at the time, and he was in the process of applying for the varsity job. And when he got it, he asked me to be his assistant. And basically I said, yeah. I mean, I never thought about, that wasn't my career goal when I was in college. But that's how it all started. And then when I started coaching, I loved it and wanted to continue with it.
You know how far back we go. I can honestly say that you are probably the most organized, disciplined coach I've ever come across in my life. So you started to teach coaching freshman basketball. How did it transform or transition into becoming a coach at UMass Dartmouth or SMU back in the day?
Well, after my first year at New Bedford High, Bruce Wheeler was the head basketball coach. Actually, back then, he was the head baseball coach and the head basketball coach at SMU. Yep. And after my first year at New Bedford High, he had an opening for an assistant coach in basketball. So he contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested. And I said, sure, I'll listen. I really wasn't looking to move on at the time. Eddie and I were good friends. I enjoyed working at New Bedford High School, my alma mater. But after talking to Bruce for a little bit, I decided that I would like to move into the college ranks. So I got hired for that position. I was in the assistant coaching job at SMU for 2 years, and Bruce was trying to get out of coaching basketball and just coach baseball. He was really a baseball guy who coached basketball. And he thought that the program would be in good hands if I took over. So he got out of coaching basketball, recommended me for the job. It had to go to a national search, but I believe that Bruce's recommendation is what helped me get that job. And the rest is history. I've been there for 40 years as the head coach now.
So I guess it was a good decision, right? And Mike, something you don't know, his very first year as an assistant coach at SMU then was my senior year at Framingham State. And we played at UMass Dartmouth at that time. So that shows you how old I am. So getting back to your coaching at UMass.
Well, before you move on, Mike, were you on the team with Van Valkenburg?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
So you guys, I'm going back that year. You guys had a winning streak of 17, 18 games, and we knocked you off.
We don't have to talk about that. But hey, Mike, you want to interject anything before I go on?
Well, I didn't know you guys. I didn't know you guys crossed paths like that. But
Oh, absolutely.
I do think that Brian and I, when I was at Bryant, we sort of crossed paths there too. Because I think SMU was on our schedule at least a couple of times while I was there. I recall. But I don't know if Brian, you may have been the assistant, or I think Wheeler was the head coach when I came through at probably 81, 82, I think, at that point. Because I do remember playing at SMU once, and I think you guys came to visit us up in Smithfield at least one time, I think, at that time. Yeah, but that's pretty cool because, Michael, you always brag about that team of yours, and now all of a sudden I'm hearing that you guys got beat.
Well, I'm not happy with Coach Baptiste right now, so we can go on.
Mike, we scrimmaged you at Bryant when I had Kevin Kolick, Timmy Dupree, Paul Hart, and it was a really, really competitive scrimmage. I remember that. I don't know if you were on a team that year or not.
What year was that?
Yeah, that was, I want to say it was 86, 87.
No, I was gone by then. Yeah, but that was,
okay.
I think that's probably that time where there's a little bit of a transition with Drury leaving and
Drury was the coach at the time. It might have been his last year.
Yeah, because he wasn't long after I left. So yeah, he and Mike McCann were, I think, on the way out at that point. And that's when the school starts to change a little bit too with academic requirements, and they're starting to talk about, going and trying to be, a little bit bigger and playing a larger schedule at the university level. So that's sort of when I remember those conversations a little bit, even when I was there in the early 80s, that even though we were playing in the Northeast 10, there was already discussions about looking to become bigger, which was pretty cool to hear. But unfortunately, I didn't get to be part of that because it happened much later.
Too, Coach, what I wanted to bring up is, okay, you were assistant coach at SMU, UMass Dartmouth. Explain the transition from being a assistant coach to now becoming head coach and the responsibilities that incur with that.
Well, the difference is huge, Mike.
I know.
Bruce thought I was ready, and he recommended me, and I really learned a lot. I learned a lot from Eddie. Eddie was very organized and prepared at New Bedford High. And then when I got to SMU, Bruce Wheeler was a education major at Springfield College, and he was actually studying to be a coach. And they had that type of a major at Springfield College. So his organizational skills and preparation took it to another level. And just using his knowledge and whatever he passed on to me was a big help to get me prepared for that next year in being a head coach. And I mean, the table was already set. When you're an assistant coach, and when you're younger, you don't think this way, but as the years go by, you end up transitioning into it. You think that your coaching, you can really, your coaching makes the biggest difference. It doesn't. The biggest difference is your recruiting. If you can recruit great players, you can be a great coach. And if you can recruit good players and you're a good coach, then you can make those good players better. But if you can't recruit good players, I don't care how much of a coach you think you are, you're not. Because you're not going to beat great players with bad players. So recruiting was the main thing that I understood after a few years. And, I just beat the bushes and tried to get the best players I could into the school, and then tried to the biggest thing is once you get these players, and I was lucky. I got a lot of really, really good players. And when I had those players, I understood quickly that it wasn't just about the X's and O's. It was about getting those five guys were the best players on their team. And now they were all the alpha dogs. Now your goal is to get them to play together. So some of those guys couldn't be the leading scorer anymore. They were all their leading scorer on their high school team. Now it was about getting them to pull the rope in the same direction. And to me, that's what a good coach is able to do, is to get guys to sacrifice some of their skill sets for the betterment of the team. And I think I did a good job with that. And I also thought that I recruited very, very good players. And in my mind, that's what makes a good coach. Now,
During your first 5 years, I don't I actually have the stats here. How was the transition? How were you guys doing when you first started coaching at UMass Dartmouth, SMU, UMass Dartmouth, your first couple of years?
We were really good right out of the box, Mike. Really good. And the
Wow.
reason I say that is because Kevin Kolick, Timmy Duper, I had 3 freaking All-Americans on my team, of crying out loud. They all didn't reach All-American status, but in my mind, they were. Yeah, they were just. Kevin Kolick should have been playing Division I basketball. Paul Hart was as good as anybody. Timmy Dupree was a 6'5" beast under the boards. Never took a bad shot. We were really good right out of the box. As a matter of fact, I got asked to apply for the Bryant job after those guys were graduating, and I did not get the job. They hired Max Good instead. Max Good had Division I experience. He was the head coach at Western Kentucky. He was, at the time, he was coaching up at MCI, which is a prep school up in Maine. He had great players. They ended up giving him the job, which, he did a great job with that program. He actually took Bryant to a Final Four when he had the program. So, they did a good job in hiring. I was disappointed I didn't get it, but that's just bringing back some memories.
That's my intention, my brother. That's my intention. Go ahead, Mike.
I wanted to go back real quick to Brian, what you were talking about being organized. And just one quick story from my end. When I was playing for Wayne Wilson at Fairhaven High School, I had experienced Jack Nabriga for one season and a different type of coach, right? A different type of preparation. But Mr. Wilson was right to the minute as far as what we were doing. Had the clipboard out every single day. There was no messing around in practice. We had certain things we were going to do and certain things we had to get done. So I could appreciate that level of preparation because that's how I thought as a player, that I had certain things I wanted to accomplish each day, and I wanted to make sure I could get those done. And when I went to college, it was a little bit different because it wasn't that. It was a little bit more, I thought, a little bit more loose as far as the responsibilities really coming from the players as opposed to the coaches. And when you are talking about going to college and you're no longer the best player on your team, I can remember sitting with the other guys that came in my class with me, and the three of us having a very long conversation because nobody's getting off the bench. We're sitting there watching, and that was the first time that ever happened to me because I'm like, I'm not in shape to play. I can't help. So you have to kind of shift your responsibilities and understand that, okay, I have to really work hard in practice, a lot of extra running on my part to stay in shape, because if I get called upon to play, I have to be able to play. I don't want to be gassed in the first 2 minutes if I have to play. So it was a different mindset that you had to take on as a kid coming in. So I can appreciate that as far as, the alpha players coming in and they're going to play right away. But for those guys who weren't going to play and have to wait their turn a little bit, it was a really difficult adjustment. And, I really relied on the seniors, especially a couple of them one of them was an All-American, to kind of guide me through this and guide my freshman class through this as far as how we were going to be prepared and really taking that responsibility on, where it was different, where you weren't going to get the time in practice because the starters were going to not be putting out as much. You're just going to kind of run through execution and walkthroughs a little bit during the season. So you weren't going to be in shape to help. So I can certainly appreciate that as far as the coaching side and being able to develop players and getting them ready to play, right? Getting them ready for the college game, which was, again, I'm repeating myself here a little bit, but it was very eye-opening kind of walking through and being that guy at Fairhaven and getting all the notoriety that I had, then going to Bryant, like, geez, I'm not even going to get off the bench at all here, which was just, I come home and complain to my father completely. My father's like, just shut up and just kind of deal with it. And no, he prepared me enough that I had to figure it out, that I was able to figure it out. But it was painful to kind of walk through because you kind of thought, oh, I'm going to come in and I'm going to contribute right away. I'm going to get some minutes, and I didn't get any minutes until really the second half of my second year. I started to get minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you know what, Mike? That's a really hard job to do. For me as a coach, I'll just tell my guys straight up: you come in off the bench, you can't afford to make mistakes. My starters can, because they're the best players I have. They're going to make mistakes, and I'm going to live with them, and I'm going to let them go until I think it's time to give them a blow. When you're a sub, You've got to come in and you've got to be sharp right from the get-go. If you're not, I'm pulling you out. And I tell them up front. And some guys can't deal with that. Other guys can. They say, okay, I'm going to do it. And everybody says they're going to do it. But when the yank comes, they're really mad. And I say to them when they come out, I said, look, I was up front with you. This is where it's got to be. You've got to be sharp right from the get-go. And then the best ones, they end up adapting to it and they go along. So if they're in the game, they make a couple of good plays, then they make a mistake. I'm okay with that. But if you come in the game and your first play is a mistake, I'm not living with it. I'm taking you out. I got to settle you down. So it's a very hard role. I sympathize with guys, but again, it's a lot about maturity, understanding that you're here to help the team, and I'm asking you to play this role, and I want you to play it to the best of your ability.
Not to go long on this, but I figured out pretty quickly when I started getting minutes, to your point, Brian, it wasn't about me. It was if I came in the game and all of a sudden there was a little bit of an uptick with the team, I'm staying on the floor. Right. It really depended upon how the team was responding, maybe not to me, but just maybe a particular circumstance that I happened to be on the floor when that happened and occurred. So you kind of ride with it. And that was something I recognized right away, that it's not about me making shots. It's not about me making a great pass. It's just about me just kind of being the routine guy, to your point, not making a mistake, and let those guys who are talented kind of push us through. And I'm just sort of just guiding. I'm just playing my role. But if we all of a sudden had a little bit of a run, I knew that was going to kind of paint me as the guy that actually drove that a little bit. So that was going to allow me to get some more minutes down the line. And I was happy to play that role. But you're right, the maturity side of it, you really have to figure that out pretty quick, that it's not going to be about you for a little while until you can actually establish yourself and get that trust from your coach.
Absolutely. And then Coach Baptiste, as you know, like I said, this is my me giving you your roses. So I'm going to put you on the spot. You've been coaching at UMass Dartmouth for 40 years. I want you to reflect, going from the beginning till now, all the great players that have played for you and the seasons that you've had in chronological order, if you can do that.
Wow, Michael, that's a big ask.
That's hard to do, Mike.
I know.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of players. My first team, actually my first team that I inherited, which was part of my recruiting class. I mean, there were some solid players on that team. A kid named Brad Smith from Worcester, Stan Benson from Quincy, good players. But I just gotta stick with the great ones, I guess, the ones that I thought were outstanding. And I'll start with the Kevin Kolick years. Kevin was definitely the alpha dog on that team. His son right now is the starting point guard for Marquette and player of the year in the Big East, not only in the tournament, but in the regular season. And in my opinion, back in that day, Kevin should have been playing for Boston College or Providence College or somebody like that. As a matter of fact, I'll sidetrack for a second. We had a thing called the Bay State Games back then where we got the local players together and competed in Boston against different sections of the state. I'm sitting in the stands with Jimmy O'Brien. Jimmy O'Brien was the head coach at Boston College. And Kolick is playing. That's why I'm at the game. And Jimmy says to me, "Who's that kid, number 21, playing for the South Coast team?" I said, "He plays for me, Jim." He said, "That kid could start for me right now." I tell Kevin that story. It's a true story. I tell Kevin that story almost every year. But that's how good the kid was. I mean, he didn't get a scholarship because he wasn't the quickest guy, but he was the best player on the court night in and night out. After Kevin's years, well, actually, before Kevin graduated, he was able to play with Paul Hart and Timmy Dupree, which are both Hall of Famers at UMass Dartmouth. But in Kevin's senior year, we had a defector from Poland named Waldemar Sender.
Yes.
His nickname was Val. He was 6'9". He played on the Polish national team with Jacek Duda. And Jacek Duda came to the United States 2 years earlier to play at Providence College. He was the starting center on Providence College Final Four team with Rick Pitino and Billy Donovan.
Ooh.
And Valdek defected from the Polish national team. He played at Madison Square Garden with the Polish team on a tour, and Jacek basically kidnapped him and kept him in the United States. So now he gets a green card, and Patino wants him to play at Providence as a small forward. And small forward, he's 6'9". Jacek was 6'11". So he gets his green card, and because of the rules in Division I and Division III were much different, because of his age and him playing on that Polish national team for 3 years, he would only have 1 year of eligibility in Division I. So Patino decides he doesn't want him. So Paul Hart's father is bowling with a guy who Val has been staying with. And he contacts me, Paul Hart contacts me and said, "Coach, we got this 6'9" kid who can really play." He said, "Why don't you meet him?" So I said, okay. We make contact. Jacek and Val come over to my house. We sit down. The biggest issue was financial aid. But Val came over here with a backpack and nothing else. He had no money. So we were able to give him a really good financial aid package. He enrolls as a freshman. Now he's on my team with Kolick, Hart, and Dupree as a freshman. Valdek ended up being a 2,000-point scorer as well as Kolick. But in that first year, I had an All-American type team. We, in my opinion, I'm still kicking myself in the butt because we didn't win a national championship, but we got beat by a team that did. And it was pretty exciting. The following year, the three other guys graduate. Now Valdek's a freshman going into his sophomore year. I recruited a kid out of CCRI by the name of Robert Williams, nicknamed Boat. And Boat was just a little fire plug who was a really good player. And alongside of Val, I recruited a kid out of the Wheeler School in Rhode Island. His name was Bevan Ingram. And Bevan was a fantastic player also. And that team, we made it to the Sweet 16. We made it to the Final 8. Again, we got beat by the national champion. We went out to Albany, New York in the round of Sweet 16, and Rochester beat us, and Rochester won the national title that year. And they had a kid named Chris Fight who was 6'9", like Val. Chris Fight got recruited by all the Division I's. Rochester had a specific degree that the kid wanted, so the kid was a big-time Division I player playing at Rochester, and they ended up beating us in a close game and going on to win the national title. So Val Sender was another one. Bevan was another one. Robert Williams. After that came Steve Haynes. Steve Haynes.
I've heard of him.
Steve Haynes, I recruited out of high school down in Plymouth. And Steve says to me, he says, "Coach, I'm going to play Division I basketball." And I'm thinking to myself, you know what, Steve, in the right situation, you can play Division I basketball. I thought he was that good. So Steve goes off to MCI, I think it was, one of those prep schools up north, and gets a scholarship to play at Morgan State. So his freshman, it was either freshman year or his sophomore year, I go to Providence College, playing at the Dunk, and I went because Morgan State was playing PC. Steve Haynes is a starting wing on that team. And Steve had a great game. He did a great job, and he belonged at a low-level Division I like he was playing at. And then after his second year, I get a phone call from Steve saying, "Coach, I'm coming home. Will you take me on your team?" I almost dropped the phone. I say, "Steve, are you kidding me?" I said, "Come on home." And he did. And we had great teams with Steve. Again, we made it to the Final 16, and Steve was a center. He went from playing a wing in Division I to being a center for us, a center who could shoot threes. Steve's senior year, he had 2 years with me. So in his second year, we made it to the Final Four. That was my Final Four year. And we got beat by the national champion in a shot that Steve took from the top of the key. It rimmed in, and popped out at the last second. Wow. There was about, 3 minutes left in the game. After that shot, he ended up getting his fifth foul and fouled out of the game. They ended up beating us in a close game. But I still say if that shot would have went in, even if he would have fouled out, I think we would have won the game. And definitely if Steve would have remained in the game, we would have won that game too.
Wow.
But along with Steve, we had a kid named Stefan Pagios out of St. Ray's Academy in Pawtucket. Stefan was 5'9", 160 pounds, but boy, what a player he was. And alongside him, we had Jason Carrero on 2 state championship teams with Durfee. Jason was just a 3-point shooter, and could he shoot. And then we had a kid from Middleborough named Aaron Lee, 6'5", could shoot lights out from the 3-point line, could go by his man and dunk it on you. Another great player. After Steve graduated, well, he actually didn't graduate, but anyway, he moved on. And Aaron Lee and Pagios, I brought in another kid named Sean Bassett out of the Pinkerton School up in New Hampshire. And again, we made it to the Sweet 16. We got beat by Lebanon Valley at Franklin and Marshall. And Lebanon Valley won the national title that year. So we ran into some pretty good teams in the Sweet 16 round of 8. And I'll tell you another funny story, because we were down in Randolph-Macon 2 years ago in the Sweet 16 with my team, with Jake Ashworth, Marcus Azor, Adam Seablum, and that group. And we're practicing at VCU. So I'm saying to myself, VCU, I think I know the coach at VCU. So I looked it up, and sure enough, the coach at VCU at the time was Mike Rhodes. So Mike Rhodes was the starting guard that played on Lebanon Valley that beat us in the Sweet 16 about 20 years earlier. And he hit a controversial shot in the championship game that won the game, that really shouldn't have won the game, because the shot was after the buzzer. Ooh. But they went back and they said the shot is good, and they won a controversial national championship. So I said, I got to go see Mike. So I walk into his office. He knew me. He recognized me. I barely recognized him because he's changed a lot. But anyway, we had a good talk. I introduced him to my team. He talked about, Division III, Division I, and all that stuff. And it was just a nice opportunity to catch up, with somebody I hadn't seen in so many years. Well, I'm getting sidetracked with all the things that happened. Let's see. After Stevie Haynes and Pagios and Lee, oh boy, that was like 1992, 93. Sean Bassett. Who else did we have? Yeah, I'm thinking of the story I just told. I'm jumping right to Marcus Azor, Jake Ashworth, and Adam Seablum, but there was a lot of great players in between. Oh, the years I had Jordan Resendiz.
Oh, yes.
Jordan is he's got to be one of the best players I ever coached. But I got to say that if he was on a team with like Kolick was on, Jordan would have averaged probably 20 points a game. But Jordan wasn't surrounded with a lot of great players, and we had a good team, but not a great team. But Jordan scored 62, 58, 56. That's what kind of a player he was. He led the country in scoring in his senior year, and he was a great basketball player. It's not like he took a lot of shots to get those points. He shot a high percentage. He was also number 5 in the country in assists that senior year, as well as leading the country in scoring. So that just tells you what type of kid, what type of player he was. Everybody loved him. He was just a great player. Going back, let's see, we had like Marcus Houtman on the team who went to Stonehill as a walk-on, wasn't playing a lot, and decided to transfer to me. And he had a great career with me. He was an outstanding player. Well, Marcus played on some great teams because of he had good assets around him too. We had Timmy Gasper at the point guard position. Timmy was an outstanding point guard.
Yes.
His father was the all-time leading coach at Dartmouth High School. His
Mhm.
father was a great player in his own right. But Timmy was the leader on that team. And we had a kid named Brian Cagle from the Winchendon School. And Brian had a twin brother named Drew. And Brian and Drew went to the Winchendon School, and Aaron Lee was coaching at the Winchendon School. And Aaron called me up and said, Coach, I got these two kids. You got to take a look at them. And I love both of them. I like Brian a little bit better than Drew, but Drew got a scholarship to one of those teams in the same league as Morgan State. And Brian fell through the cracks, and my eye was telling me Brian was the better of the two. So Brian came with me, and it was Timmy, Brian Cagle, Marcus Houtman, and then we had a 6'8", 6'9" kid named Nick Cecilio from down to Cape Cod Tech. Nick Cecilio barely could bench the bar on a weight bench. And he was a baby. I mean, he was 6'8", but he was so young. Back then, we could redshirt.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, there were no more red shirts in Division III. So we redshirted him. He got rookie of the conference in his first year. And but his first year, I think it was his second year, he was playing with Timmy, Marcus, and Cagle. And again, we had an outstanding team. We were a number 1 seed in the national tournament, and we ended up going out to Ohio Northern and playing against a team called Carthage from Wisconsin, and we got blown out. We were just out of our element. We had a bad game. We weren't shooting the ball well. We weren't defending well. Everything that could go wrong went wrong, and we ended up losing that game. But those kids had a fantastic year up until that point. Let's see. Who am I? I had some other names. Oh, I had a local kid who I thought was a really good player named Nick Portalence. Nick played at Volk. Nick was a 6'8" center at Volk. Ended up losing like 70 pounds in his senior year. Came to UMass Dartmouth. Only played for 2. College just wasn't for him. He ended up going on getting a trade job and doing well for himself. But he was a really good player for us. He played with Jordan Resendiz. So, yeah. I think I got to take a breath for a few minutes and let you guys talk a little bit.
I can talk a little bit. One of my good friends, and he spoke very, very highly of you. And you've seen him quite a bit up at the Burger Basketball League. That would be Masadi Caldwell. He spoke very highly of you.
I'm going to tell you a story about Masadi. Masadi was on our team, right? And Masadi was a Division I player. He got a scholarship to go to UNH. He won a title at Providence Central. He was on the same team with Cooley and a couple other guys. So Mo goes to UNH, and after a couple of years, I don't know, playing time or whatever, he wasn't happy. He transfers in. So Masadi was one of the toughest players you could ever imagine. So at that time, I used to love going down to play the Sunshine Conference down in Florida. I would have to raise the money to do it because it was out of the school's budget. But right. I thought if we go down there and we played against really good competition, it would make us really good when we got back to league play. So we played these teams down there. We played Florida Tech. We played Lynn University. All these teams that were like not only Division IIs, they were Division IIs that won national titles. They were that good. So we're playing Florida Tech, and I said, Mo, they got a 6'5" kid who's an All-American. And Mo just looked at me. She said, Coach, I'm going to lock that kid up. He's never played me before. So sure enough, the kid was averaging 25 points a game. I want to say the kid had 11 or 12 points. Mo just locked him up. I think that kid has nightmares about Mo to this day. Mo was just one tough SOB, and he did a great job on that kid. And actually, let's see. I'm pretty sure we won that game. We won that game and lost in the championship game against Merrimack. Merrimack was in the finals with us, and we won the first round and lost in the second round. Yeah, that was unbelievable.
Mike, go ahead, interject, my brother.
I'm sitting here just enjoying listening to all these stories because
It's
I love all this stuff.
It's
So
phenomenal.
we're talking about Brian. We're talking about all the teams that did well and the great players. Can you talk about, without creating any real drama, about some of the guys that you missed that you really wanted?
Say it again, Mike.
Could you tell us some stories about some of the guys that you went out to recruit that you didn't get, who were great players that you really wanted?
Well, that brings to mind back when I had Pagios and Lee and Haynes, we played in this round robin tournament with Stonehill. It was like a local contingent of schools. Stonehill was the only Division II, I believe. And it was us, Bridgewater, Stonehill. I can't remember who the other team is off the top of my head, but on that team, they had a kid from Fairhaven. I think it was Jacobson, 6'7" at the time.
Yeah.
And Pagios had something to prove because the coach at Hendricken at the time was Ray Pepin, and he took the job at Stonehill, and he had a decision to make. He was either going to take Jamal Gomes or Stephen Pagios out of Rhode Island to be his backcourt at Stonehill, and he gave the scholarship to Jamal. Jamal is the coach at Hendricken, really good guy, really good coach, good kid, love him. So Pagios obviously felt he was the better player, so he played well in those games, played really well. As a matter of fact, he missed a shot. It was a couple of steps over half court. If he would have made that shot, we would have won the tournament against Stonehill. But the shot rimmed out, and we ended up losing the game by a point. But, yeah, I remember there was a couple of kids from Fairhaven. Jacobson was one of them. There was another one, 6'7" kid. Mike, who was that?
Ooh, I don't know. Who was the other big kid for Fairhaven?
I don't know.
That would have been when Southworth was there too, and I don't recall. I know.
Yeah, maybe it was just Jacobson then. Yeah. So, I know the other kid I was thinking of. The kid played at Apponequet. His name was Donnelly.
Oh, Dave Donnelly.
Dave Donnelly. Yeah.
Yes.
I recruited all these kids. I mean, some of them were lucky enough to get scholarships. Some of them weren't. Usually, the bigger guys were the ones that got the scholarship. Some of the guards would slip through the cracks, and I would be able to get some of those guys.
Imagine if you had gotten Dave Donnelly. Wow. Wow. But, Coach, the reason why I asked you to do this for me is because obviously you had and still have a tremendous coaching career. And I wanted to give praise to those players who played for you. That's the reason why I asked you for that. But now I'm going to ask you another question because you know how I am. There is, you may have a different answer, but I think I know the answer. Who was the most difficult person that you guys had to play against in your career? Who did you guys have to go against that maybe you guys couldn't stop? I think I know the answer, but tell me what you think.
Well, I'm going back to Kolick's team, and we played against a kid named Kermit Sharp.
That's the one. That's the one.
I mean, Kermit was a starting guard at Cleveland State, yes. Division I, and thriving. And he didn't get along with his teammates, and he came back and ended up transferring to Clark University. Well, Clark University, before he got there, was a national contender. Mm-hmm. And add Kermit to that team, and just put them as the cream of the crop. But so were we. I mean, that was the year we had Kevin and Hart and those guys, and they beat us on a missed shot. Again, we could have won the game, and we missed a shot, and they went on to the championship game and lost in the championship game in double overtime. So yeah, Kermit was a great player. I ended up coaching him. I was able to coach the All-Star team. I was the coach of the year in this area or something. And we had an All-Star game with Division II and Division III combined, and Division I. We were playing against Division I. We played against Jamie Benton. We played against Tommy Garrick. That was the backcourt for the Division I team. My backcourt was Kermit Sharp and Kevin Kolick. And you know what? Those Sharp and Kolick held their own. And Sharp was actually, in my mind, the cream of the crop in that game. I mean, Tommy and Jamie were great players too, but that's how good Kermit was. I thought he could have played in the NBA. I thought he was that good. I thought he could have played in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I saw him after that fact because we have our annual shootout down Morney Park, and he came down with the Worcester team, with a guy by the name of Larry Hampton. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I remember the Hampton brothers, sure.
Yes. So, yeah, Kermit, we became pretty good friends, but he was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Mike, you want to interject anything, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to just kind of twist this a little bit. So I'm going to put both of you on the spot.
Watch out now.
And I'm teasing Michael on this a little bit. So Brian, back in the day, if you had the opportunity, are you recruiting my friend down here?
Hell no.
Who?
Are you going to recruit Michael?
Mike, I didn't hear you. There was some static or something.
There must be.
I was asking you, Brian, back in the day, would you recruit Michael Consaccio?
No, I didn't.
Make it correctly. No.
I'm trying to think, Mike. I think you might have been already in college at Framingham State.
Yes, yeah, I was.
If you had the opportunity, would you recruit?
Why you put him on the
spot? If I had the opportunity, I would absolutely recruit him.
I was just trying to get to that point. That's all I was trying to get to.
Oh, okay, I got you now. Yes.
Now, Coach, thank you for that. Yeah, Mike, I'm gonna get you back for that. But I want you to try to I guess put your 40 years in perspective as far as coaching is concerned. I would like you to let the audience know exactly how you feel or how you felt and what you want to convey to everyone about your experiences being the head coach and having the outstanding career that you've had.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've gained from being a coach, first of all, I feel like I'm blessed to be able to do something that I love to do. I love walking into the gym every day. I'm blessed to be able to do that for 40 some odd years. But the biggest thing that I've gained out of coaching was the relationships that I've built over 40 some odd years. I like to stay in contact with as many guys as I can. And those relationships have just flourished over the years. And that's my biggest prize.
You know, too, Coach, again, I want to thank you because if I recall, I think I did your very first basketball camp. I think, if I recall, I think I did. I might have. I'm not sure. At UMass Dartmouth. And Mike Seminole.
Mike, you were not only a fantastic guy to have working at camp as a coach and officiating and doing all the things you do, but you were also amazing at lunchtime when we were talking about all the trivia that you would bring up every day, and you would have all the coaching staff thinking, geez, I got to find this out. I got to find this out. And I'm pretty sure it was before cell phones, so we couldn't just Google it and look it up. We had to really jog our memory and try to find the answers to it. And I remember that as being a lot of fun.
And also the fact that the counselors that you hired were phenomenal. And the guest speakers you had were phenomenal. You had Ed Cooley, Chris Herron, and Mike. What he used to do on one day a week, he would do a shooting drill. And it was phenomenal. I mean, every time he did it, he hardly ever missed. And we were like, man, is he going to miss? And what he would do, he would talk while he's doing the shooting drills. And it was phenomenal. I mean, we look forward to seeing that. And also, we had a great time. The crew got together, and we all got along. The kids were great. It was well organized, and I totally enjoyed working at the camp. And I appreciate you for inviting me. And it was when I first started my refereeing career and stuff, and I owe you a debt of gratitude for that. You've been a great friend, and I love you. And this is my tribute to you, my friend. And Mike, would you like to say anything else before we have to go?
No, it was just great listening to this and great seeing Brian again. And I love all these stories. I love all the old school stuff, as you know. And so yeah, Brian, Michael, and I connect quite a bit on the old school and some of the old basketball history. We've spent hours texting back and forth or on a phone call with each other. So that's sort of kind of where we land with each other ourselves. So it's pretty cool to hear.
Coach, before we let you go, how can people contact you if they want to contact you, or I don't know, through social media or whatever? If they have any questions, how can they contact you?
Same way you contacted me for this.
Great. We can definitely do that as well. But Coach, again, I want to thank you for coming on my show, along, of course, with my co-host, Mike Samuel. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an honor and a pleasure to have Coach Brian Baptiste. I want to congratulate you on your 700th career win as a coach and your 40-year outstanding career as a basketball coach at UMass Dartmouth. You are, I consider you one of my best friends and one of the best coaches I've ever come across. And I just want to thank you for coming on my show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish you guys a great night. Stay tuned for the Sports Empire Network. We'll be on every Thursday. We have some great guests coming on. And I want to thank you for coming on. Stay safe. And thank you for tuning in. See you next Thursday. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Mike and Mike. Thank you.
You know it.